All right, we'll go ahead and get started. We know that a lot of people are at Silicon Slopes, including Rob himself right now. So don't want to take up too many people's time, but welcome to the Recruiting and Retaining Talent in a Challenging Market webinar hosted by UATA, Utah Aerospace and Defense Association, and then in support of IsoTalent, who will be presenting today on the topic. And then we thank our sponsors, World Trade Center Utah. So just wanted to welcome everyone. And for those who don't know about Utah Aerospace and Defense Association, we are the trade association for industry here in Utah for aerospace, defense, and security. We also support in other realms like academia with a lot of support from local universities. We have service providers, which is someone that Rob is at IsoTalent in support of our industry to help better any issues that they might be having. And then lastly, we have state and local government. So we work a lot with our legislators and help supporting the industry in that way to help convene, promote, and advocate towards the industry. So if you have any questions about us, feel free to reach out to me after the webinar. But today is all about IsoTalent and learning all the tricks and trades to the industry. And so I'm going to stop sharing here and just pull up Rob's bio. So we have Rob joining us, and hopefully I don't mess this up, but Rob Lifford, and he is the co-founder of IsoTalent, which is a software company that has created a platform to help hyper-growth companies fill their open roles by connecting their clients with top-tier recruiters in the market, often referred to as the Uber of recruiting. Rob is also the co-founder of TechBuzz News, a Utah-based news agency collecting and distributing news stories to individuals and other news organizations about the Utah technology sector. And sorry, hold on one second.
Sorry, that's me.
That's okay, you're good. I just had it open on another page, but this is where we print things, so. All right, I wish I memorized Rob bio, but I didn't. So anyways, technology sector in general Utah economy. So over the last 20 years, he has worked as a human resources executive and notable experience governing HR operations for international and domestic corporations specialized in hypergrowth startups. Rob graduated from Utah State University, the School of Business, with management in human resources and a second degree in business information systems. He's a native to Utah, and his wife, Carly, my bad, sorry, live in Farmington, Utah with their 4 amazing children and a mediocre dog, which I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. In his free time, he enjoys spending his time fly fishing, skiing, and on the sidelines of one of his kids' events. Another fun fact about Rob is I just learned he lived right next to Hill Air Force Base. So he has a lot of understanding of the base, and actually his bus route used to go through the base. So a little fun fact there for the day, but I will let you take over, Rob, and we'll do questions at the end. We do want to allow for a good amount of time of questions because we want to help answer questions in this realm of talent and recruiting for aerospace and defense. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Like Nicole said, I'm a Layton native. I was born and raised there. I went to junior high school, and spent my whole time up there. I love Layton. I love Hill Air Force Base. I have a kind of a unique understanding, given my background and my upbringing about this industry. I've jumped after I went to school. I jumped into the Utah tech startup scene, and I've been working in that for 20 years. And we're kind of at a funny inflection point of what we're seeing in the talent and in the market and talent play, marketplace for talent. And so I want to walk through that a little bit and talk about what we got going on. You know, as we over the last 20 years, we've been in an employer marketplace, right? It's very much been a buyer's market where we can go and, you know, companies didn't necessarily have to, I mean, they would say they would need to worry about employer branding and that sort of thing. But the reality is that because there were so many applicants and not enough jobs, that, you know, you didn't have to, you could get away with a lot more. The world is flipped upside down. So right now, well, in 2017, we crossed an inflection point that's pretty notable, and it's only accelerating. And so, 2017, we got from an economics perspective in the United States, we crossed more jobs than we have employees, right, or job seekers. So right now, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but because of that, it makes for a very challenging hiring market. So let's get going now. When I do, I'm kind of, I'm a father of four. My oldest daughter is at Davis High, and then my youngest is 8, and I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. And they make fun of me because I love a good dad joke. So we're gonna start off with the dad joke. You guys, now here's my only request: if you repeat it, I do not want credit. Take it as your own. You can say you made it up, but that is the way I look at it. Okay, so dad joke. Apparently, 30% of owners of pets let their pets sleep in their beds. And I tried that last night, and now I have a bunch of dead goldfish. There you go. So share that amongst your friends. Okay, now we're moving on. Let's talk about the environment of what's going on in the world. Right now, a lot is, like I said, a lot has changed, a lot has shifted. There are things that used to work, like I said, that no longer work. Okay, so first thing, hire slow, fire fast. I'm not speaking to fire fast. I still think that's actually a pretty decent principle. Hire slow is super broken. It is a great way to not get the talent that you need. Okay, so make sure that we'll talk a little bit about that. Companies used to take this approach to where they were like, you know, the fact that employees were working at our company, it was like a great honor, like, you know, we're doing you a solid. Right now, that's not the case anymore. Don't get me wrong. It felt a little bit more of a one-way respect, right? So as an HR professional, you know, we've had to change the way that we approach managing our current talent. We need to look at random disqualifiers and make sure that they are needed, right? And this is particularly true as we talk about federal contractors or subcontractors. There are some things that we've always assumed that are true that might not apply because of some tweaks, either in executive executive orders have been signed by several different presidents, and, you know, who you can hire and who you cannot hire. We've always assumed a certain way, but there are things that the laws have changed, and we just need to be cognizant of that. Employees have to stay longer than 3 years. That's not the case. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then candidates need to talk to a whole bunch of people before we hire them. Also not true. Now, here's the basic math. Right now, because of that inflection point that we talked about, there are 2 jobs for every 1 job seeker in the market. And it's actually worse in Utah. In Utah, it's come down a little bit. It was high as 3.1 in Utah County in particular. And that's come down. And so what that means is that the job seekers are on the market for a lot shorter time period. 19 days is about the average, 21 to 19 days. And it's bounced around there for the last 24 months. And so what that means is you have to shift the way that we are going about the hiring process to make sure you're capturing that talent coming through. Now, Utah wages have also gone up. Now, the good news on the Utah wages is, so post-COVID, things got nutty. And then over the last year, we haven't got all the data back yet, but the trend right now is that we are looking at a flat flat wage increase, which is like a great respite for companies because it has gone up way. As a matter of fact, it's gone up faster than even our outrageous inflation rates that have gone up really high. And that's particularly true with engineers. They've gone up, but they are actually what we're seeing right now. The trend is flattish, which is significant because we haven't seen that since 2008. So that's great. This bottom bullet point, though, is the one that I want you to pay attention to. 2.3 years. Employees are staying at the roles 2.3 years. My dad stayed at his company for 40, right? And so as the generations go on, they just move more quickly. And so you need to, and they don't always have to, it depends on how you treat your employees and like career pathing, that sort of thing. But it's a way that we need to like look at our employees. If we know that stat, we can manage to it, right? And the goal would be to increase it, right? So I think the days of 40, working 40 years at one company are gone. But I don't believe that the days of an employee working 7 to 10 years at a company are gone. It's just a matter of getting a career path in place for them so they can progress along the way. More about the math, job application. So when we throw a job out to get a successful hire, and I'll talk about the time frame here in a second, to get a successful hire, you need to put 35 applicants in the top of the funnel, right? That will get you 12 qualified candidates. If you put in 35 candidates at the top, you should get 12 qualified out. And this is math that we've done over years and years of study. And so this is what we found to be true. So 35 will get you 12. You can get 6 fully vetted candidates. You'll bring 2 or 3 on-site interviews. 2 to 3 are what I would call hireable, meaning that they fit all the qualifications. And now you're just looking for the tightest fit. And then you'll get down to 1 hire. So if you're not getting 35 at the top to get 1 out of the bottom, you're going to have a hard time being successful in your hiring process. So as you go through that, there are ways to maximize getting more people out there. And we won't talk a lot about that today, but as far as like, there's a lot of strategy you can do, but feel free to reach out to me specifically on that as it's something that I've spent a lot of time and doing a lot of research in, talking to industry experts to get the top of that funnel filled up as quickly as possible. This is the stat. This is the stat that I want you to remember. There are 2.1. I think it's 1 right now. It's 2.1 jobs right now in the state of Utah for every job seeker, and it was 1.9 in July, and it's kind of bounced around there. Now it's interesting though, and I was talking to Enos up on the 309 last week. Public sector is in a really interesting place to snag private sector talent. So right now, the private sector is to kind of walk you through what's going on. Is the private sector is had a lot of churn, right? So after COVID, it took off. It almost felt like that .com type of feeling where everyone was getting starting a company, and there was a lot of venture capital funds around, and everyone was starting. That's since churned off in 2003, and we're going through what I'm calling there's kind of a burn. We got to burn out some of the companies that are looking to either go away or get acquired or whatever it may be. But what that means is there was a lot of layoffs at the beginning of 2023 and the end of 2022. And from a talent perspective, it was pretty jarring for those individuals. Now, as part of that, they are looking for a little bit more security. Now, one of the things that I absolutely love is that anyone that falls under the UATA group, right? Whether we're talking about Northrop, the big boys like Northrop or BAE or Lockheed or some of the smaller contractors, a lot of them have had a hard time breaking into the talent pools down in Silicon Slopes or kind of south end of the valley, right? If you're familiar with the geography of Utah, that talent pool is looking for a little bit more stability, right? They're a little going through a little bit of a shell shock of not wanting to go through another round of layoff, or they've gone through three. Even if they've made it through several rounds of layoffs, it's very, very aggravating to them, or it gives them a lot of anxiety. And so it's a prime time to be able to go and get some of that talent. So we'll talk a little bit about that. As you go through that, one of the things that has caught everyone up on, and so this is if you require, whether it's a secret or top secret clearance, they don't know how to get through that. And so as part of that, as you put together your job descriptions, you put together your job ads, and you're out there advertising, I would actually cater directly to that group and say, hey, look, if you don't have a job, we would obviously having someone with a background, your clearance is preferred, but if they don't have one, say we can get you, make sure you have language in there that talks about your ability to get people, right? And from what I understand, that it's actually going currently, the office that is doing the background checks are going pretty quick. We're seeing some of these background checks come back in as little as 2 months, which or 6 weeks, which is amazing, compared to some of the past times. So that's good to know. Okay. We talked about the job security. Okay, this is the speed to hire is going to be your key. And unfortunately, government contractors, because of some of the laws that are in place, we and just some of the bureaucracy that can be involved, we haven't. This isn't a place where we've particularly shined well. So I want to talk about what success looks like, right? So the average job seeker is on the market, like I said, for 19 days. So if they're on the market for 19 days, and it's complicated how you get the math there, that means you basically, from the time that you put a job ad out there, if you can put a job ad out and hire somebody in the span of what I call 35 calendar days, you will get any talent on the market, right? If you are not currently doing that, that's your goal. Okay. If you want to dive into a different talent pool right now, your goal should be to get it down to 35 calendar days. If you can do that, you can hire anyone under the sun. As I've talked to several UATA members over the last month or so, I'm actually really impressed with how the industry is caught up to the startup scene, right? And the thing that they have that defense contractors are working for public sectors, the thing that group of companies have that startup scenes do not, is they have mature benefits, and particularly mature retirement benefits. COVID has caused everyone to reevaluate, on site versus hybrid or whatever. And then in addition to that, what's going on with the startup scene, and a lot of these guys are pushing employees to go back to work and stay in the office. It really is this prime opportunity for our group to pounce and pick up some of the talent that's there, that it would be new to the industry, right? The one thing that as I've been talking to the different groups, and particularly as we talk about, if we're talking about technical talent, meaning engineers, software engineers, technical skilled laborers, whether we're talking about CAD or, high-end welding or whatever it may be, the projects and the things that we're working on are easily the most interesting thing that any of these employees have ever worked on. And so you will win out in the interesting things to do category. I mean, it's just amazing. some of the projects that we get to look at and see, and it really is state of the art. It's awesome. And so now that we've had this maturity on the other things and a downturn over here, if we can be faster in our hiring process, we can win that talent. And if you're as we talk about your particular hiring process, the thing I want you to think about is how many touch points does the candidate get when they're going through the process. Optimally, it's 4 to 5. I'll give you a variation if that you can go to 6. If you're over 6, it's too many, right? The way that I want you to think about it, if they're gainfully employed right now, if they have a job right now, how many times do they have to take time off to go through your interview process? Everyone gets 1 day off, right? To go in and do what I call the on-site interview, and they can take a half hour to an hour and a half for phone screenings here and there. But if they have to take more than 1 day off to do any on-sites or longer interview cycles, you're not going to win the talent that you want. You're not going to get the best talent. And the thing that we need to think about, we're working on really important, national security, security for both us and our allies. We want the best talent possible. So we want to make sure that the bureaucracy that we have in place isn't impeding us from getting that best talent possible. Okay. So as you go through, look at it, and your goal is to get to 4 touch points: recruiting screen, hiring manager screen, on-site interview, which is on-site interview should be, if you can get it into one time, and you can have 9 different interviews in there, that still only counts as 1 touch point because it's on 1 day. That's great. And then my only break to all this from a philosophical perspective is the salary negotiation, right? Salary negotiation, once you get to the point where you're going to make an offer, call them as many times as you need to get to close the deal, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of moving parts in that piece, and it's okay to have several conversations with them once you're get to a verbal offer or you're negotiating. So, but on everything else, it's 4 touch points, and 5 at the tops. So I say, it's a little tongue in cheek here to go back and say, hey, you need to optimize it for 7 calendar days, but because 35 is really what we're going for. But when I say 7, what I mean is, if you had all the logistics taken out where you guys could meet and they could meet, could you run somebody, for the beginning to the end in 7 days? If the answer is no, then your process is too long. We know that will stretch over the course of 3 to 4 weeks, but if you had all the logistics taken care of, you should be able to do it in 7 business days, right? Or 7 days, that period, right? Including a weekend. That's optimal. And I've seen it done lots and lots of times, so I know that it can be done. Now, this is an interesting pay strategy. The good news about, especially if you're in a bigger company, a lot of the pay strategies is already predetermined. You don't want to do it on site. The thing that I love, government has been about this life for a long time, is wage transparency. We have surveyed over 1 million job seekers. And if you don't have your wage transparency, you don't have the wage of the job, at least the range, a realistic range on the job description, they'll pass it by. So there is zero reason not to put it on. And if you think there's a reason, go back to what I just said. There's zero reason to go to not do it. Now, one of the things that one of the things that I want the group to think about is there is a hurdle that we need to get over from a culture perspective, right? If you're bringing somebody that hasn't been in the public sector or contractor world, whatever it may be, and there's a big misperception about what that world is, right? And so helping somebody, what I call putting a culture cop at the front of this process, or somewhere in the process, to do a little bit of a sales job, right? To say, hey, this is a really neat place to work because you guys, these are really great places to work. But also make sure that we're not hiring smart jerks. There are a lot of smart people out there that so having that culture cop out there to not only sell, but to sift out the jerks in the world, that is something that is definitely needed in your process. Okay. So work from home, this is an evolving process right now. A lot of things are changing. A lot of things are up in the world. I think hybrid's here to stay. I think 100% in office is doable. But it has its challenges, right? So if you if you need them in the office 100%, make sure it's tied to a bona fide reason, right? So if you're going into have to be in a secure area to do the work that you're doing, obviously that's a good reason, right? If you have any flexibility for hybrid, make sure it's on there, and state it what it is, right? Because what we're seeing is we're seeing people that are willing to travel and commute abnormally large distances if they only have to go into the office 2 to 3 days a week, right? So for example, if you know Utah geography, we're seeing people that are willing to travel from Spanish Fork or Provo area to Hill Air Force Base, whether it's be on the train or in the car, if they only have to go up 2 or 3 times a week, right? If you state that, what that does is it extends the pool that you're able to of candidates that you're able to draw from. And so making sure you call that out specifically in your job ads up front, and then making sure that you're keeping the promises that you held in the job description will greatly expand your job pool, right? And help you get some of those people that have been in the startup scene that are looking to come over and looking for a little bit more security. We talked a little bit about this. Things are leveling off. The COVID wages have increased, but like I said, that just as the prices are starting to level out to not be as nutty as before. And I've looked through a lot of your guys' job ads and your postings, you guys are competing. This is an important thing to understand. And I put engineers up here because it's a good example. There's several other examples that are similar to this, but I think engineers are most importantly. They are outpacing engineers over the last 10, 15 years have outpaced their salary by, I think they've grown at 22%, right? From an inflation standpoint, 20% from an inflation standpoint, when we're trying to be between the 2 and the 4 perspective. And so year over year growth has been way outside of what it should be. We have, like I said, we haven't gotten the data back from 2023 yet, but I think this is the first time where that curve will be flat or a lot more flat than it is right now. I just want to put this picture in here because it's a big fish. Just kidding. It is a big fish, but this is one of the things I want to talk about. I think I want to talk a little bit about where we're fishing for talent right now. So the old way of doing things is this. Having grown up in Layton, and I still live in Davis County, I have friends that have worked for every single one of these groups. And so we just keep going through this like round robin of talent. And I'm not saying stop that, right? Because it's a very successful way to go. And as contracts come and go, I understand that that's the right way to do it. What I'm suggesting though is that there is the Utah tech scene is changing, and we have this opportunity of shooting fish in a barrel right now because that talent is looking for something a little bit more stable in life, and our companies can provide that. And so what I would do is not be afraid to go out and go after that talent. The other thing is too is as you look at your government contracts, because of all the different changes in the laws, like I think there are laws or there are contracts that and subcontract that will allow you to get foreign national workers, right, that are employed in the United States, right, not sitting in other countries. But as people are coming through the visa process, I think from an ease perspective, we've always said no, and certainly that's the case with some contracts and a lot of contracts. But I would challenge everyone to go back and read through the contracts and specifically look into who you can and cannot employ, because it might open up an opportunity to a group of workers that you couldn't otherwise get previously under previous thought processes. So be open to that, be open to who you can and can't, as you go through, who you can and cannot get from, you know, felons, and challenge the status as you read through these. Some people will push back, say, no, we just don't want them. If you can't fill your roles and your contracts don't say that you cannot, then it's time to have a broader conversation about that. And I can't speak to the specifics. Obviously, every contract and every that you pick up is different, but I would take a deeper look at it as you go through it. So as we go through, this is the one thing that I want to leave you with. How can you win? How can you win getting any talent on the market, not just, you know, someone that's been through other federal contractors in the past, or federal employees? How can you win? 35 days. That's the magic number. If you can get your hiring process down to 35 days and then have a clear path for anyone coming from the private sector up on how to get clearances and sell them, it is the best time I've ever seen for federal contractors or public sector workers to pick up people out of the private sector. And so, but your goal is to minimize your bureaucracy in such a way that you can hire somebody from the start to the end in 35 days. So that's where we're at right now. I'd love to open it up to the group and talk about any questions that we might have. So what questions do we have out there right now?
Yeah, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box, and thank you, Rob. I also wanted to know, we have a committee meeting for workforce because it's definitely the biggest issue we face here in Utah in aerospace and defense. So it's a lot of the questions, and what we've found a trend in that committee to be is that there is just this misperception on the industry, which you spoke a little bit about. But I was wondering if you could touch on that a little bit more, and maybe how we can change and reimagine the world for people haven't been in the DoD world or don't have an understanding of aerospace and defense, to get them to want to have more interest in it and really understand it better.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a misperception out there. The best way to go out is you've got to be. I was actually talking with Enos about this the other day. It's a hard, like, if you're outside of the public arena, right, the public sector, whether it's on the federal contract or whatever it may be, breaking into that is actually pretty hard. It's a pretty tight knit group, right? And so, as whether you're an HR practitioner or a recruiter or a hiring manager that's looking for different pool of talent, you need to advertise in places that might not be the normal place, right? So, like, don't get me wrong, like utahjobs.gov, I know that we have to, right, from a regulations perspective on some of these roles, but don't let it be the only place, right? So, like, make sure you're out on Indeed, make sure you're out on you're posting on LinkedIn. Go to networking events that are in the public sector. For example, today I'm at Silicon Slopes. I stepped over to Kiln, who was really gracious enough to let me use this room for free, and their internet, with they have a whole booth here to talk about this. And these are great places to go and find new talent. If you're in the area and you're looking, haven't gone, we have a couple extra tickets, hit me up on LinkedIn, and we can get you in for this afternoon or tomorrow. So, but that's a great way to go and pick up the talent, because people don't understand how great the opportunity. My favorite stat is people don't understand how many engineers are, and I speak about engineers because I'm in the tech world. It's so don't let's understand, but they don't understand how many engineers are north of the airport. And that, statistically speaking, there are more engineers that live north of the airport than there are south of the airport. And that breaks people's heads. Like, they just can't wrap their head around. That's awesome.
Yeah. And you mentioned posting on Indeed, LinkedIn, and making sure that you're creative on your posting. But for more of the hiring manager sides, I know we have a lot of recruiters here on this call, but if a lot of companies in aerospace and defense, mainly in the manufacturing world, they're too small to have a and so for the hiring managers, what would you suggest for them to be creative on finding talent? I know in our world, we call it active recruiting, but not everyone might know what that means. So if you can explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, like the way that I look at it is it's ABR, right? Always be recruiting. And so even when you don't have an open role, but one's coming down, you're like always talking about it, talking about what you're doing, talking it up. Building a network. So when that role comes up, it's easier to fill. That's one way. The second way that as you go through it, that I think is important is, make sure that you're loud on like, be thoughtful about where where you want to pull the talent from, right? What the role is going to be. So if you're looking for, a manufacturing, engineer, right? Like, and that you like, hey, I don't want to pull I don't want to pull someone out of Northrop or out of BAE, wherever it may be. Where are some of the others that will have this like vein of talent, right? And then exploit the heck out of it, which is a terrible thing to say, but like, I remember when I was at Fusion IO, we were building out the recruiting, or excuse me, we're building out our engineering department, both hardware and software engineer. We we found a vein of talent from a particular company. I won't name their names, but they are a very large tech company in the state of Utah. And like, my biggest badge of honor is their lawyers sent me a cease and desist, which was really funny because I had no contracts with them and I've never worked with them. That was like a scare tactic. And so I just put it on my wall and I'm like, check this out, right? But it was, they had the technical expertise that I was looking for, and I just kept calling them, right? And so I just went down the path, and and I found them on LinkedIn, or I was really creative. And that's, it was, you have to do those kinds of things in order to win. If you don't have a recruiting group, there are places out there that are not as expensive as they used to be. So for example, the reason that the IsoTalent started is I hated third-party recruiters. I thought that, a $25,000 fee was the most ridiculous thing under the sun. And so we started our company up, we do an hourly model, and away we go. And so what that ends up being is we cost about the same amount as an internal recruiter does. And so an internal recruiter costs about $5,000, $5,000 to $8,000 per hire, or about, that's about where we sit. And so, and we find people all day long inside of that 35-day window that I talked about earlier.
Great. I did have a question from industry that I had gathered before, and actually you spoke a little bit on it. You mentioned a lot about working from home, and obviously that's offered a lot with more of the tech side. And in our aerospace and defense world, we can't always offer that because of the security issues, and especially in manufacturing when it's a lot of hands-on work. So their question for you is, how can they compete? Is there other benefits or things they can offer? Because it's hard to compete with that sometimes.
Look, the thing that the aerospace world has above anyone else is, because of how the federal contracts work, they end up, overtime, and working 90 hours or 70 hours is like pretty rare, right? Unless you guys are going through a push because of how the contracts are worked. And not all of them are like that way, but most I've seen have some sort of, simulation to that, right? That is like the weirdest thing and the greatest thing for compared to the private industry. I can't remember the last time I've worked under 40 hours. Like, I literally cannot remember that, right? And so I'm talking probably 10 years. So to go back and say offer that kind of flexibility to that workforce is great, and still get comparable pay. It's fine. the other thing that's really in the favor of the public sector or federal contract world is you're seeing all these really big tech companies like Google's Google, Twitter, Amazon, Zoom, uh, Facebook. They're all pushing all their engineers to come back, and they have to be in office. And so it's starting to become a little bit more of the norm. I wouldn't sweat it. Like I it was way more of a problem a year ago. Right now, I don't think it's a barrier the way it used to be.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing to remember is, try to offer benefits, maybe again, be creative with how you offer benefits. So if you can offer a gym membership on a discounted rate or different opportunities that maybe some of these other companies aren't, that will also benefit the employer and they'll be more interested. But it's funny you say that, like, under 40 hours, or 40 hours to be exact, is so true, because when I did meet with your nice Swag on base, they said, we kick people out exactly at 5. They can't stay here later. So it really is, they do see a very significant work-life balance, obviously depending on the company, but yeah. So another question is, a lot of companies have to hire outside of Utah right now. So I guess, do you have any strategies for that, and how to bring people out of state, maybe even if it's not just Utah, but how to bring people out of state in and get them to
Yeah,
be involved?
so when I was at a Fusion IO, I had to do a lot of this, right? And so I had to bring a lot of people from California, the Bay Area, or from Boston, and in Utah, is 15 years ago or maybe 20 years ago is classified definitely as like one of those flyover states, right? And I think we did a better job from an advertisement perspective. UAuto's pushing on this. Silicon Slopes has done a great job of this over the years, of highlighting the benefits of Utah. I never lose if I can get them on an airplane to visit here. So if you have a key talent that you want to be in state, get them here. Do not a physical on site, and if you could, if the company can afford it or is willing to, make sure you bring their spouse, right? Our mountains sell themselves, right? And so what you do is you go and sell the lifestyle that comes with being in Utah. And frankly, if we're being open, and I can speak openly about it, right? Being a white Mormon male in the state of Utah, we have a lot of misconceptions around what we are and aren't. I remember my dad went to a convention in Ohio, and someone asked him where his horns were. And being a smart ass that he was, he's like, "Oh, they're detachable, right?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, of course they are." And like, like those are the perceptions that he had to overcome. That was in the 80s. And I'm like, that's super weird, right? But so,
Oh,
it is
sorry, I think you froze there for a minute. Maybe it was just
okay.
my end, but
So what I was saying is, like, you just have to get them over some of the misconceptions that come with Utah, but and by physically get them here and to see that it's a great place to live, that our school system, I'll put our school systems up against anyone, particularly in Davis and Weber County. Like Davis County school system, I'm born and raised there. Like we punch way above our weight, and it's really funny to me where I always like, people will come in and they'll be like, "Oh, I got to put my kids in a private school," and I'm like, why? Like my public elementary, junior high, and high school are testing way above the private schools that are around here. So it's just, those are the kinds of things that people need to understand. Our state is run really, really efficiently. So
yeah, I agree. And it's a great community feel here. You're involved with a lot more. I'm from Connecticut, so I'm an out-of-stater, and there are a lot of differences from Connecticut to here. Definitely, even though Connecticut is smaller, it feels like Utah is more connected. So another question we had was, and I know you kind of answered this, but it's brought up all the time. How do the small guys, the mid-sized companies, compete with the primes, the big guys like Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin? it's continuously a struggle, and a lot of mid-sized companies are the ones that need that talent. I mean, not saying that Northrop Grumman doesn't. They actually have 800 plus positions open here just alone in Utah, so it's crazy.
Yeah.
But
Here's what I'd say. Like, I don't look at being small as a downfall. It's a huge upside, right? The way that it's just how you go and sell it.
mhm.
The small group, like, look, big companies are gonna have big budgets and be able to do some big budget things. What they can't do though, that the small groups can, is you can like, I, I've worked for big companies, I've worked for small companies, right? The thing I love, and big companies has its definite advantages on a lot of things, but what the small companies have over the big companies is that the work that I do here, I can see affecting the company as a whole. And that's what you have to sell. So you sell the work and the influence of the work that they're going to do in the day-to-day office. That's the difference that you can sell. And that's meaningful and it's impactful for somebody that's like, because like compensation benefits, like as once those boxes are checked from like, hey, good enough, like those don't matter quite as much. It's the other things that are more important, like the doing meaningful work, right? And like, not a lot of people don't love being a teeny tiny cog in a big machine, right? While others do. And so it just depends on what you do. So what I would look for in those small companies, as a small company, is look for the talent that wants to be, wants to make an impact on, for the bigger, in a bigger picture kind of a way.
Yeah, and this is the most innovative technology there is. I mean, this is
Oh,
what is changing the
super,
world. So
super neat stuff.
exactly. You just have to do a really great job of explaining yourself and honestly branding yourself, which is something that we as UATA, which is we've heard multiple times around, is not the most catchy name. It's not bringing in new talent. So we're actually going through a new rebranding process as well. And I hate to say it, but because the aerospace and defense industry is such old industry, like you mentioned, it needs a little work on bringing the newness back, the new, thrilling, exciting software development companies, what they're doing, what they're creating their website. It does make a difference to this newer generation when they're checking you out and digging in on you more. So rebranding is, I mean, Silicon Slopes, if people don't understand from Utah, it's one of our biggest tech associations and it helped bring talent here. So, we hope to do the same with this rebranding and it will all be released after October 12th. So stay tuned for that. But if you can rebrand as a company, I believe that's also something that will really help you in hiring. I have another question here. Maybe it's just we have Kevin saying, great response. Small companies allow you to have ideas, move things forward. Do what you want to see and make it happen instead of your boss having meetings about it for 3 weeks. Making a decision will happen. Yeah, I agree. So things happen a lot quicker in smaller companies, as Rob said. You'll see the effect a lot quicker. So, I mean, do we have any other questions? I can keep asking and we'll probably give people some time back here, but I'll keep asking from questions I gathered from industry. And the hot topic is security clearances. I know, Rob, you have a lot of opinions on that. And some things we just can't, in this industry, we can't get around. So, but
Yeah, all I would say around the security, like that's the question that I get asked the most from the talent perspective, is they're looking to transition into the industry, is they don't know how to go about it. And they don't understand that like most companies will just, they have a path to do it because they don't explain it in their job descriptions and that sort of thing. They just say must have a security clearance. What they need to say is, yeah, must have a security clearance. If you don't have one, we'll help you get it, right? We have a path forward to get it. And so that's the thing that most don't understand, that they need help they need help as you recruit them. So make sure that your job descriptions, and I get it, everyone wants to, you're going to save a couple of months in the in ramping that employee up, but if you're looking for fresh ideas and fresh talent and that sort of thing, you have to get around this as an employer. So, and you need to cater to that group.
Mhm.
And so as long as you have a path forward, like go down that route, it'll make a difference.
Yeah, and I think going off of that, as the candidate side, don't be afraid of clearances, because think of it like getting your PhD. It actually will help increase
Right.
your salary. Everyone will want you more. You're definitely more of a hot commodity in the aerospace defense world. So don't be afraid of asking how you can get a clearance. Secret clearances is the lowest level, and that's actually the easiest clearance to get. And actually, top secrets are not too hard as well. They might take a little bit longer, but definitely find out ways that you can and ask us. But we have a lot of companies that we work with that will work with you on getting your clearance. And like I said, you'll definitely be a need a lot more in the market.
That's right.
Well, I guess we'll wrap up here. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to email Rob and and we'll provide you guys with our emails and information. But IsoTalent is a great partner to us here at UATA, so we really appreciate that. And you guys are doing great work. You're definitely I like to not think of you as a recruiting agency, as we meant. It's a different approach. You guys help with the client and really figure out a strategic way to solve the recruiting issues, which is basically what we talked about on this whole call. So
yeah, if you're looking to break into some of these non-traditional veins of talent, shoot me a note, right? Hit me up on LinkedIn, or you can, we put my email address is, rlifrith@isotalent.com. You can get it from UATA or any different way, and we'll walk you through it. It doesn't mean you have to engage with us. Sometimes we're obviously happy to do that, but if you're just looking for some advice, we're happy to run you through that as well.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Rob, and we'll see you here shortly. So I'm going to make my way over to you at Silicon Slopes, and we'll have this recording sent out to everyone, but feel free to ask any questions. Thanks, guys.
All right. If you guys want to go to Silicon Slopes today, hit me up. I do think hit me up on LinkedIn. I think we have a couple extra tickets. So, happy to pass them over to you.